place, verify that some users cannot access a particular shared resource. Only certain users can access a particular shared resource. Verify that users cannot share or copy organizations' data to or share it to a personal user. They cannot do that. You should verify that. Then the least privileged access. Least privileged access means that you want to give a particular access according to what the user deserves or what the user needs at a specific time. So after that specific time, the user doesn't have the access again. That's like just-in-time access. So for instance, there's a user called Joy, and Joy needs to access a particular resource. Maybe Joy needs to access OneDrive Admin Center or SharePoint Admin Center. You are going to give Joy a SharePoint administrative rights. So you don't give the full rights, which is a global admin right. You don't give that, because global admin right, once you have that in place, you have given a particular user, and the user is not secured, the attacker will not gain access to that particular user's credential. And from there, it gains access to your entire network because the user is a global admin. So to prevent that, you give the user what the user wants to use at a specific period of time. So if Joy wants to access OneDrive Admin Center or SharePoint Admin Center, you give Joy SharePoint administrative rights, and maybe she needs to access it for like 4 or 2 hours. You give it to her for 2 hours or 4 hours. Once the 2 hours, 4 hours is done, Joy doesn't have access to the organization's OneDrive Admin Center or SharePoint Admin Center. So that's what least privileged access means. Then you assume breach. Assuming breach means that, like I said before, you assume that you have been hacked. So what are the things that you will do if you have been hacked? You put in place security solutions that will scan for threats, that would mitigate these threats, that will prevent these threats. So you do that. That's what you do in assuming breach. We have 6 foundational pillars. We have the identity, the devices, your applications, your data, your infrastructure, your network. So what is the identity? Identity can be a form of or a means of identification, how they can say, this is me, this is Ope. So it could be your username, it could be the particular device that you use. So Ope will be known for using Android device. That's Ope. Ope attended so and so school. That is Ope. That is my identity. So identities may be your users, your services, or your devices. How do you prevent attackers, or how do you protect your identities? You put in place things like multi-factor authentication, because you cannot assume that having a password would make you safe, because passwords are easily, you can easily get it. Attackers can easily get access to your username and password. So what if the attacker gets access to your username and password? That's why you need to put something called your multi-factor authentication, which is a second level of authentication, whereby the user signs in with their username and password. After signing with their username and password, they also need to verify. You need to do a second level, or you can even make it a third level, making it 3 different levels of authentication. After it verifies that you are using your username and password, it still needs a second level of verification, which you would be needed to provide a 6-digit PIN, or depending on how long the PIN is, you need to put this PIN. This code is sent to your mobile device or your email address. So you put this pin after putting in your username and password, and then it verifies you. Okay, so what about if you're not the one that is initiating this request? That's why you need this multi-factor authentication. So if you're not initiating, you're not the one putting in your username and password, once you see this request that someone is trying to access your data by using your username and password, you get the code. If you know you're not the one that initiated that request, then you don't need to put in any code. You don't need to accept if you're using the Microsoft Authenticator app. That's how you protect your identity. You can also put things like privilege as identity management, which I mentioned in the least privilege access, whereby you give access to you give the user the right amount of rights that he needs. Then we have devices. So your devices, you can use tools like mobile device management to protect your devices, protect your users from sharing documents on their personal devices, because the world is moving into mobility. We are no longer sticking to only using your laptops to access the company's information. Whatever is comfortable, we're trying to preach users' productivity. Whatever is comfortable for the particular user. The user might be comfortable using their iPad, they might be comfortable using their mobile device, their Android, their iOS phone, or their own personal laptops. But the organization's data is at risk. How do they protect this data? That's why you put in place things like mobile device management to protect, and mobile application management to protect the company's information on their personal device, so they don't share it or mistakenly share it with the wrong person or the wrong application. Now, how do we protect applications too? We protect applications by making sure that users are not using shadow IT applications. Shadow IT application means applications that are not, that don't meet the organization's requirement. So if you come into an organization, they tell you that so and so application is what the organization uses. And for instance, users, maybe they have administrative rights on their device. They want to install all these third-party applications that may carry some viruses, all these free third-party applications. So we need to prevent that. That's shadow IT applications. We don't want our users to be installing applications that are not accepted by the organization. You can also use things like SharePoint to protect users from using shadow IT application. You can use mobile device management, that's Intune, from preventing users from sharing things via application. What about data? Data should be encrypted, they should be classified, they should be labeled, they should be protected. So we can use Azure Information Protection to achieve this. Data should be classified and protected. So there are data that might be containing sensitive information, and some users might decide to share this sensitive information. What I mean by sensitive information, like I said, credit card information. What if it's your employee details with your employee username and password, or when you started work at the organization? You use Azure Information Protection to detect this, and automatically it classifies this information as sensitive information. So it puts some protection like do not forward, you can only read, whoever is the resident can only read, they cannot forward, they cannot reply, they cannot do anything, they cannot save, they cannot copy, they cannot paste, they can only read this file. And if you don't even have access, according to the protection on it, you won't even be able to read the file. So those are the things that you need to put in place. For the infrastructure, which is your on-premise virtual machines, your on-premise resources, you put in place things like endpoint protection. You want to protect your devices from threats. You put in place things like firewall policies. You don't want them to be able to have access to certain network addresses. That's what you do for infrastructure, and your network should be segmented also. So another approach is doing defense in depth. Defense in depth is you're assuming that you have been attacked. So what are the things that you need to put in place, the various security methods that you need to put in place when you have been attacked? So under defense in depth, we have the physical, we have the identity and access, we have the perimeter, we have the network, we have the compute, we have the application, and we have the data. So physical security, you want to limit access to a data center. Only authorized people should have access to a particular data center. So you only give rights. Not everybody should be an admin. So you give rights to whoever needs to access that particular server, that needs to access that particular device. So not everybody should be made admin. For identity and access, you give rights to a particular resource. You make sure it's not everybody that can change anything. It's just like the physical too. You make sure it's not everybody that has access to a particular resource. Then the perimeter, you put in place things like DDoS protection. For the network, you segment the network. For the compute, you protect your on-premise or your on-premise virtual machines or cloud virtual machine by not allowing certain ports. You don't want to, maybe you don't want to allow RDP to that particular virtual machine. You block RDP. RDP is the port that allows you to remote to a particular machine anywhere you are. You don't have to go there physically. Then applications, you put in application protection policies. You don't want users to be able to share, for instance, you don't want your users to be able to use USB. You want to block USB, you want to block Bluetooth. You don't want your users to share files using that method. And your data, you put encryption, you encrypt your data, you protect your data, you classify your data. That's what the defense in depth approach means. So some of us might have heard of the CIA triad: the confidentiality, the integrity, and availability. Confidentiality means the ability for you to be able to keep an information that is confidential. You do not share this information. You do not you make sure that this particular information does not get into the wrong hands. So you're able to be trusted with keeping this information intact. Integrity means that how the data was met, how the data was created, that's how they are going to meet it in the next 20 years. Nothing is going to happen to that data. This data is not going to get corrupt. That's what integrity means. It is how you met it, and that's how you are going to meet it in 10 years from now. Then availability, make sure that this particular data is accessible, is available. So if you did not keep the data intact, how is the data going to be available for users? You give users that need this data, you make sure it's available for them. Nothing has happened to this data. It hasn't been shared. The sensitive information that has not been shared to an attacker or shared to someone that is not supposed to have rights. So that is the CIA triad: the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So Microsoft also gives us the shared responsibility model. So what this shared responsibility model, for some of us that might have attended the AZ900 class. We have different cloud models, which is the software as a service, the SaaS, the platform as a service, the PaaS, infrastructure as a service, the IaaS, and the on-premise data. So from the diagram, you can see that on-premise, the organization is responsible for every single thing, meaning the security of the particular resource. The organization is responsible for it. They are responsible for the network, the physical network, the network controls, the operating system, the account and identity, the protection of those things too. They are responsible for the information and data. Everything is responsible by the organization. Then when we come to the IaaS, where we are introducing the cloud platform, that means that the cloud provider is responsible for the physical host, the network, and the data center, whereby the organization is responsible for creating the virtual machine, for doing the necessary things like the update, upgrading the operating system, things like that. Now, in terms of security, the security is shared between the cloud provider and the customer. So it's not just the customer that is taking on the responsibility. It's a shared responsibility. Then for the PaaS, the security is also responsible by the cloud provider and the customer, the organization. They're responsible for that. PaaS is for people that want to test application, create applications, people that do SQL database. Then the SaaS. The SaaS, the organization, the security is handled by the organization and the cloud provider. But in the SaaS, the organization does not take care of provisioning virtual machines or setting up anything. Everything is provided by the cloud provider. So the organization just puts in their information, they join their device, they create identities, but every single thing is taken care of by the cloud provider. That's what the shared responsibility model is about. So let's talk about common threats for some of us that might not know some of these threats. So we have the data breach category, we have the dictionary attack, we have the ransomware, we have the disruptive attacks. So the data breach has the SQL injection, the malware designed to steal passwords or bank details, the phishing. So some attackers, they don't do what we call dictionary attack, whereby they start trying different username and password to gain access to your data. Instead of doing that, they can use this means of sending you a legitimate an email that looks like a legitimate email. So for instance, maybe I work at Hashem. I work at Hashem Limited, and our domain name is hashem.com. An attacker might decide to change the Hashem. The S in the Hashem might be a $sign, and I would not see it because I see Hashem. I'm not taking notes of simple mistakes that the attacker might have made. So they would send maybe as joy@hashem.com, sending mail to okpe@hashem.com, and telling me that I should click on a specific link. So if I click on that specific link, I will be able to do so and so. It might be something that they'll use something that I can relate to. So it can be a thing like, I need to change my username and password. So they'll say, joy@shem.com is sending a mail to me saying that my password is about to expire in 2 days. I need to change this password before I don't have access to the company's information again. And when users see that, they start panicking that, I must have access to the company's information. I don't want to be locked out. So from there, they click on that link, put in their username and password, and the attacker gains access to that information. That is, and once they gain access to the information, they immediately start causing different things. Maybe they move on to holding the information at ransom. After holding the information at ransom, waiting for you to pay a certain amount of money. Even after paying this certain amount of money, attackers, they don't care about you. They don't care about your organization. All they care about is causing havoc. And some of them care about making money. So once they have made their money, some that might be nice enough to drop your data, allow you to have access to your data, but rarely it happens. Some might just not give you your data back. So your data is gone, your money is gone. How will you be able to stop these attacks? That's why you need to put in place various security methods, various security products to help protect you and your organization. We have dictionary attack. The attacker makes sure he runs a particular tool. He's not doing this by himself. So this tool that is running would be trying different names or different names in the dictionary to gain your password. So they'll be trying, maybe your password is shell. They will try that. It's going to be trying every single thing in the dictionary, every single name in the dictionary, until it gets your password. That's what you call the brute force attack, the dictionary attack. Then the ransomware, like I mentioned, they gain access to your organization's data. They now block all your data and encrypt it to an unreadable format. You cannot access this data. And in order to access this data, they will send you a mail saying you have been attacked, and they require you to send a specific amount of money, maybe in Bitcoin, or a specific amount of dollars that you need to pay before they give you access to your company's information. That's the ransomware. And the DDoS attack attempts to exhaust an application's resource. So they target any endpoint. So other common threats include the coin miner, the rootkit, the Trojan, the worms, the exploits, and the exploit kits. What is encryption? Encryption makes your data, turns it to an unreadable format. So maybe you had saved a document and you named it story.doc. When you encrypt this document, the content in story.doc, it says, I am a girl. It turns to an encrypted format. You don't see it as I am a girl again. It turns to maybe like XGKLM. It just changes. It's not something you can read until you have decrypted it. So once you decrypt it using two different methods, you'll be able to see I am a girl. So there are different types of encryption of data. There's the encryption of data at rest and encryption of data in transit. Encryption of data at rest. So maybe you have put in place encryption, and when you put in place encryption, you have already created various files. These various files might contain sensitive information. Those are files that are at rest. They are sitting, you have created them. You are not moving them to anywhere. They are not being shared. They are just on your device doing nothing. but they contain sensitive information. So you encrypt those files. Those are the data at rest. While the data in transit are the ones that are always moving, constantly moving. You are sharing this file to a specific person. That specific person is sharing that file to another specific person. That is what you call data in transit. So it's moving from one place to another, from one person to another, from one application to another, from one device to another. You need to encrypt that data. So encryption does not stop at the ones that are moving or stops at the one that is at rest. It encrypts both the ones that are sitting in one place and the ones that are moving. We have two different types of encryption. We have the symmetric and the asymmetric. So the difference between the symmetric and the asymmetric encryption is that the symmetric uses the same key to encrypt and decrypt the data. So you don't need to have a separate key. While the asymmetric uses a public key and a private key, a public key to encrypt, a private key to decrypt. We also have hashing. Let's not confuse hashing with encryption. Hashing is used for passwords. It's like an algorithm that converts the original text to an unreadable format. So, for instance, there might be like a particular format that it must meet. So, in case you have joy, in the hashing algorithm, J stands for 1, O stands for Z, Y stands for 2. So that is how the hashing algorithm does. So once it meets this particular algorithm, it's going to be able to decrypt the hashed password. So there are different functions of hash. There's the deterministic, which the same input produces the same output, meaning that if you put joy, joy is supposed to bring 101, or joy is supposed to bring 1Z1. It's not supposed to bring back 2F2 because that is what has been specified. Joy is supposed to stand for 1F1. That's the same input produces the same output. So it is different from encryption, like I said, because it is not subsequently decrypted back to the original. So once you put in your password as joy, the hash of the password verifies that this is 1F1 and she should have access, she should have authorization, she should be authorized to be able to have access to that particular resource. That's how hashing works. So your passwords are not stored as joy, but they are stored as that code 1F1. So the attackers are kind of confused. What is 1F1? That's not a password. They cannot use 1F1. They cannot enter 1F1 into your password and it goes, unless they have both your password and the hash of your password. Microsoft has a cloud adoption framework, which consists of documentations, implementation, and best practice that supports and increase security and compliance. And Microsoft has a specific life cycle, which is the define strategy, plan, ready, adopt, govern, and manage. Define strategy, you want to define the particular strategy that you're going to take in case you are it depends on what you want to do. Maybe you want to migrate or you want to put in a security. So you have to define how you are going to, that's the strategy, how you are going to implement this. After strategizing, you plan on when you are going to implement this. then your strategy and your plans are ready, you move into the adoption phase where you actually implement. So after you have strategized and say, this is what I plan to do, then you now plan on the date to achieve this or the time to achieve this. You also take in place things that might affect it. That's in your strategy and your plan. So once you have done that and you are ready, the next step is to actually implement what you want to do. So if I want to implement security solutions, that's where the adoption and govern stage comes in place. After this stage, you now move to the manage stage, which is after you have done your implemented your security solutions, you now start managing these security solutions. That's the life cycle of Microsoft's cloud adoption framework. So I'm going to go into lesson 2. Module 1 is quite short and it's like the beginning of the session. So lesson 2, I'll be describing identity concepts. So I'm going to be talking about common identity attacks. Some of these.
Hello, Okwe, let's hold on. If I can see someone start, let's take questions on,
okay.
on so far, and then let's see. Yeah, so please unmute yourself if you have any question. Hello, Winnie. Winnie, we can see you're muted. We can't hear you. Your background is very noisy. Can you type in the chat?
Yeah, I already did that.
Oh, you already dropped your question in chat. Okay, hold on. Let me read it out. Okay, I can't see it, but let me see. Hold on. Maybe you dropped it in the group. Hold on. Let's look for her question. Okay, I can't see your question. I just saw. Okay, please explain the encryption again. I didn't get the public and private key encryption and decryption, please. Thank you. That's good. All right. Go ahead. Okwe, just a quick run through the encryption again.
Okay, please hold on while I move to the slide. Okay, so like I said, there are two types of encryption. There's the symmetric and the asymmetric. The symmetric uses a particular key. It doesn't use two separate keys to encrypt. So if you encrypted with a specific key, that same key is what you are going to use to unlock. So if, for instance, take for example, you are entering a door. The same key that you use to lock that door for the symmetric is the same key that you are going to use to unlock the door. Now for the asymmetric, you are going to use a public and a private key. The public key is what you use to encrypt, and the private key, which are two different keys. So you're not using the same key again to unlock the door or the same method. So for asymmetric, maybe you used a key to open a key that everybody has to lock your door in your house. Then the private key is the one that only you has that can open that door. That is what the private key is. So that's the difference between the symmetric and the asymmetric. I don't know if that explains it, or you want me to go over it again.
Hello, Winnie. Okay, look at it this way. you you allow, for those that are married, you have kids, they, they're your children, you don't hide anything from them, but at the same time, if they needed to use things, they'll need to come and go through you as a parent. So they'll say, "Mommy, I want to use the TV, can I on the TV?" um that's like a way that you have encrypted their access to TV time. Okay. And then if you check, so in with the world of smart TVs, even when the kids get to TV, we have some families have differentiated children access and parental access. And if they needed to go into any other access, they will need a password and permission to go into that next access. So what encryption is just trying to say is that, with two types, when I say data at rest and data in transit, when I'm chatting with you on WhatsApp, that is data in transit. When I have a picture on my phone, that's data at rest. So what encryption is saying is that you have encryption at two. Microsoft is saying that you have encryption at two-way with them. When the communication is going from your end to the other person and back end, that data is encrypted. I'm sure you, for those of you who used WhatsApp for a long time, there was a time that WhatsApp wasn't doing data encryption, and all of a sudden they came to say they now do encryption. So even when you are chatting from your phone to somebody else, you are sure that that data is encrypted. Now, that concept of encryption is what is a level of protection that they have put, meaning that nobody can access this information without having the public key and the private key. Okay, because that's the padlock that they have used to ensure that the access to this thing must be through this key method. So you can see that we are chatting, but you will not be able to see the content of what we are chatting. You can see data, but you will not be able to see the content of the data unless you have any of the keys. Now, depending on the kind of encryption you have used, so if you use a symmetric, that's when it says that it uses the same key to encrypt and decrypt. What does that mean? I have locked it. When you want to open it, you that is receiving it, it is that exact same key that I used to lock that you will use to open. Why asymmetric is saying that we will have both public and private key. We'll have a general key that all of us have, but we'll have a private key that is special to us. So when I want to open a file, it is only this key I can use. And if I want you to open my file, then I have to give you my private key. If not, you will not be able to open the door. Any other questions? We hope that okay, she's asking, she now says, hold on, sorry. Are those keys like codes or characters? Yes, they are. I like to say that they are gibberish. Yes, they're like codes or characters. Okay, what do you think?
Yes, they are like codes.
Another question for you. She says, and how are they shared securely with the recipient? So I'm sure she's referring to in the case of especially around the when you have to share the key. What's the So the concept is, I've said that if you have this key, you can access my data. So the question is, how then do I ensure that this key is shared in a secure manner so that when you get it, I can be sure that nobody has tampered with it? You want me to help out?
Yes, please.
Okay, so that's why we have what we call key management. So you're absolutely right. In a case of the symmetric where there's one shared key, in organizations, what they have done is they have put in key management solutions. So when we secure an environment with an encryption key, we go to the key management and we vault that key. Why we vault it is so that if anybody needs to access that key, because remember, it's now shared, and when something is shared, it means that you can only but trust yourself. The concept of security is that you trust only yourself. That's the concept of security. In security, we don't do what we do in relationship. I trust you. In security, nobody trusts anybody. It's called, so if you remember the first slide where I pointed, it's called zero trust. There's a slogan in security that we say, what's that? The funny slogan. We use the slogan, trust no one, verify everything. So in security, it's not like your relationship. So trust me, it's very difficult being a security person and still living a normal life, because you kind of struggle to trust things, because by default, to be very good in it, you learn not to trust anybody. That's just me trying to crack you up. I don't know why I feel like that. People in this session now that will be laughing because I can see some of my bosses here. Yeah, so in security, you trust no one. So because it's going to be a shared key, you want to make sure that you are sure that when Winnie is taking the key, the organization can know that it is Winnie who took this key to access the file. So that's where a key vault management system comes in, where you vault the key and then people go there and then request for it and then it's given. In the case of asymmetric, which is public key and private key, it's your private key. So it's the same thing. You don't give your private key to anybody unless you are very sure, because the moment you give your private key to somebody, the person can automatically. So most organizations use the public. So the public key is, since we all share the same key providers. I'll give you an instance. If you go to any website, you will see a padlock on top. Okay, so if you go to things like jumia.com, Konga, they have to have, any website that's actually taking transactions must have the SSL certificate. So that's a type of encryption that happens there. Now, but remember, you all have different devices. So for your system to be able to even open the web portal, behind the scene, what happened was an encryption and decryption. And so, because they cannot be exchanging key with you just because you want to open the web portal, you are not yet even putting data. Every system, whether a laptop, whether a desktop, come with default public keys embedded in them. If you're using a laptop today, one of the ways you can verify what I'm saying is go to your start menu, type MMC. When you launch MMC, you will see certificates, and when you go to certificates, you will see you have default certificates, and when you go to the details, you will see the key encryptions of those certificates in them. Right now, every system come with default. So all public providers have their public key, and they said, because I know you'll be coming to my website by default, you just want to see my website, I would go and put in the default from the certificate providers, put it in on the decks on these machines when they are being produced. But when I want you to now access data that I have collected and I have encrypted, then I have to trust you to want to give my private key. So for asymmetric, it's still the same method. You need a key management platform that you would have somebody request, and then the key will be shared with the person. And then when we begin to enter advanced and expert, you will see how we manage keys and how keys are encrypted themselves. So it's a key, but you will still have to encrypt it like the PKCS12 with password, so that only when I give you this password can you open and then see the actual key itself. And I hope that answers when you said, and who now decides what form the key takes. When you say form, when you say asymmetric and I'm sure you're referring to the symmetric and asymmetric. It's you, the organization. The owner of the organization decides what type of key method you want to use based on your scenario. So you're the one that will decide what kind of key method you want to use. The key method. So in this case, since we're looking at Microsoft solutions, these are the two key methods that Microsoft has used at different levels of their platforms that we're using. Because remember, we're looking at Microsoft cloud platforms. So they're bringing to us that the two types of encryption method in their platform are both the symmetric and the asymmetric. Okay, quick one. Okay, a quick run dry of cloud framework again, just quickly, and then how companies who have on-prem and need to begin to move things to the cloud, how do they merge this cloud framework? Just a quick run dry of the cloud framework again.
Okay, thank you very much for the detailed response to the encryption part. My slide. Okay. Okay, so for organizations that are planning to move to the cloud, the Microsoft provides you with implementation guidance, documentations on how to prepare, things that you need to put in place. So what I mean by implementation guidance, prerequisites that you need to have or put in place before you actually migrate. So this life cycle, you define your strategy, in case you are trying to migrate to the cloud, you define the ways or the different means by which you can move to the cloud. So you might want to use a particular tool. You might want to do a big bang. You might want to do stage by stage. So you define the strategy. So you define what exactly you want to use to actually migrate. That's where your strategy comes in place. So if you have decided to do a big bang, then you plan, you move to the planning phase where you plan how are you going to carry out this big bang. What are the things that you need to put in place before you carry out this big bang? So in case you need to inform your users that, okay, we're going to be migrating you from on-premise to the cloud, you need to plan that. You need to plan how you're going to inform your users. You need to plan on how you're going to tell them what to do or the things that they need to do in order to accept the cloud that they are coming into, or to get used to a cloud that they are coming into. So that's the planning phase. You need to plan on what to do to carry out this migration, or the things that you need to do for this migration. Once your strategy and plan is ready, the means on how you want to carry it out, the plan is how you are going to carry this thing out. Once they are ready, then you move to the migration phase. Then you start the migration, the actual migration of your on-premise resources to the cloud. And once you are moving, once you are in the migration stage, after you have moved big bang, for instance, so I chose the big bang instead of the step by step. So if we're assuming that we're going big bang, once you are done with the adoption and the governance, putting policies in place, moving your users, migrating their files, their documents, once you are done with that, then you are now in the management phase. So you are done moving, every user is fine. You want to now start managing this cloud platform. You want to start pushing policies. You want to start giving users this. You want to start allowing users to have a particular resource. That's how the life cycle of Microsoft's cloud adoption framework works.
Just to add there, imagine that you are in an organization that um, is asking themselves, we have our data center on-prem and we're spending money paying for power, paying for light, paying for security that needs to watch the data center so that nobody enters the data center, paying for power. We're in a wonderful country, Nigeria. For those who are in Nigeria, generator. If you're in any other place, you need to worry about power, generator. You need to worry about access controls, who enters into the data center. You need to worry about this data, where we are saving it, backing it up. How do we do? Then you need to worry about your disaster recovery plan. All of this in your on-prem. Now, Microsoft is saying that there, if you want to begin to adopt cloud in your environment, one of the things you want to do is take this 6 life cycle as your as your roadmap, as your roadmap to deciding how you want to do this, right? And then sit down and follow through. Now, the interesting thing about this is that you don't need to do your whole infrastructure. You can take you can take it bit by bit. Imagine a HR recruitment application that sits in your data center, taking the time of your administrators to check whether the application is running, whether it's uptime. Meanwhile, you don't do recruitment all the time, right? Imagine moving this workload to the cloud. So you can use the life cycle plan to say, application by application, of what value is it to us as an organization, and can we begin to move some of this? Because when it's in the cloud, as we go deeper into this course, you will see the value adds that you have, and you can spend more time doing more interesting things than worrying about whether the server is up, whether the server has gone down, whether anybody has hacked it, whether through it they've used to come into your environment. You can begin to see how governance, compliance can, using Microsoft platforms, can help you achieve, these standards that you need, instead of spending time worrying about whether the server is up, whether it's running. So the cloud adoption framework doesn't necessarily have to be big bang. You can do it per application basis, by project basis. You can say we want to move to the cloud for only this subset. We use this framework, and then we follow through the steps and the life cycle, and then we can get to the final stage. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let's move on. Okay, that's all for questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so in the lesson 2, we're going to be describing the concept of identity as a security perimeter, understanding differences between authentication and authorization, describing identity-related services. So these are types of common identity attacks: the password-based attack, the phishing, and the spear phishing. So the password-based attack, attackers use dictionary, like I've explained previously. They use the dictionary-based attack where they use a tool that starts running continuously just to find out your password using different dictionary matches. Like maybe if your password has cream in it, it will find cream, it will check in the dictionary and then apply this and sees whether it allows access once it has put in the cream. That's what the tool does actually. It's not the attacker just runs the tool, but the attacker is not the one checking in the dictionary if this matches this. It doesn't do that. So the tool is what is going to check for words in the dictionary that matches your password. And once it finds that word in the dictionary and it's a match, it gains access. That's what they call password-based attack. Phishing sends you a mail that looks like a legitimate mail, that looks like it is coming from your organization, or it's coming from your organization, or it's coming from a particular organization. Maybe you are seeing a, let me say for instance, MTN. You have been applying for a job at MTN now, and MTN now decides to send a mail, but this is not MTN. It's an attacker that is using MTN's name but changes some code, so it does not just give you MTN. It might be MEN, but you will not see it because you are too excited. You have received a job offer that, okay, you need to start. Just click on this link to accept the job offer and you start work. Immediately you click on this link. So once you see that, you're too excited, you don't read anything, you don't see anything. That's why user awareness is very important. So once you click on that, the attacker gains access to your password and username. So you click on the link, you put your username and password, and they gain access. And there's the spear phishing, which targets a particular user in your organization that now comes and acts like it is the user that is sending you the mail. Like, okay, kindly send this to me, or kindly click on this, or maybe it's an HR now. HR is telling you that your performance is quite low. Kindly click on this link to see what you can achieve or what you can do to increase my performance in the organization. That's the spear phishing. That's what attackers use to gain access to your password. So we have identity as the primary security parameter. Like I said, identity is how someone or something can be verified. It's something that is unique to you. It's your name, your what you have, what people can use to say this is Okwe, what people can use to say this is Joy. So your identity can be verified and authenticated and may be associated with the user, your application, your device, and any other thing. For instance, you're signing in with your username and password and you want to access a particular application. You are putting in your identity on that application. So that application sees that, okay, this user, Opeoluwa, has signed into Microsoft Teams. That's how it's associated with application. This user are signed in with Microsoft Teams using a Samsung device. That's how it's associated with your device, or using an HP laptop. And then this user are signed in with signed into Microsoft Teams using a Samsung device, trying to access the credit card information data. That is how it is associated with the data. There are 4 pillars of identity. We have the administration, we have the authentication, we have the authorization, and we have the auditing, the AAAA pillars. We have administration, which has to do with management, basically management. You are giving a particular identity is given a specific right to manage the entire organization. That's where administration comes in place. Authentication is saying is trying to verify, authenticate you, trying to verify that this is the person that has signed in to this machine, or this is the particular identity, this is the particular user. That's where authentication comes in place. It authenticates you. It has confirmed that, okay, Okwe meets the specific requirement. She has signed into this particular. Oh my. Sorry. Assigned into this particular device. It now authenticates you that this is Okwe. Now, authorization is giving you access to the device. Once it verifies that you are Okwe, it authorizes you to have access to that particular device. It's not, you don't just stop as a device, have access to that particular application, or have access to that particular resource, be it device, data, doesn't matter. That's what authorization means. Now, if you have access, you are given an administrative privilege, it checks that this is you. What about logs? How do you keep logs that? Because you cannot say that you are monitoring every particular user. You cannot say that I know that Okwe has signed into Joy's system, or I know Joy has signed into Okwe's system, or I know Okwe has signed into the Active Directory or has signed into Access. You cannot have that information. You cannot be seeing a person every day or monitoring the person. You can't follow 1,000 people. You're not God. But you can do what is called auditing. Auditing tells you Okwe has signed in to access this particular application. It keeps a report, it keeps a log that tells you that Okwe has accessed this thing. Joy has accessed this particular thing. Okwe has changed a password. Okwe has changed a particular user password. It might not even be a password now. You need to know that information, because you can, it can also be a situation where it's not even Okwe that is changing the password, but it's seeing it as Okwe because the attacker has gained access to Okwe's information. That's why auditing is very important. Each of them are very important. So these are the 4 pillars of identity. So modern authentication is an umbrella term for authentication and authorization method between a client and a server. So before modern authentication, there was basic authentication. Basic authentication is actually not secured. Modern authentication is actually more secure than basic authentication. Basic authentication is legacy authentication. So organizations should right now stop using legacy authentication, because it's using an older means of authentication, which means that for basic authentication, users can sign in with their username and password, and it stores their credential. It stores it. Once it stores their credential, it signs in to and gives access to every single information the user has access to. That's how basic authentication works. So there's no this thing, there's nothing that is preventing it. Every attacker, once they gain access, and organizations are using basic authentication, it's easy for them to gain access immediately. But modern authentication now uses a more secured means of authentication, meaning that the user signs in with their username and password, but their username and password, which is their credentials, is not stored. Is not stored at all. So they have to be prompted to sign into another, to access another resource. They need to sign in. That's how modern authentication works, and that is what every organization should be using right now. Modern authentication offers you with authentication, authorization, and auditing. It also allows you to put in authentication and authorization policies. It allows you to monitor user behavior and more. So with the Azure Active Directory, you can monitor users' behavior. You can say this is what the user signed into, like audit. You can say this is what the user has accessed. We also have tools like the Microsoft Defender for identity, which uses behavior analysis to connect to the Azure Active Directory that uses modern authentication. Now it finds out what the particular user has accessed. If this user OPE has been accessing user B's machine, or OPE has been accessing a machine for the past 5 days and she has been in Nigeria. Now OPE accessed a machine by 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. in the morning, 10:15 in the morning later on. OPE is accessing a machine from Russia or China, which is very impossible that OPE would have traveled in 15 minutes to China. It monitors such behavior and it alerts you. That's how modern authentication works. Modern authentication also supports single sign-on. Single sign-on means that you sign into a specific application and you are signed into the rest of the application. So you don't need to come back and say, I want to sign in. You have signed into Teams. You don't need to come back and say, I want to sign into Outlook. It signs you in with your username and password. It's a single sign-on. And then Microsoft Azure Active Directory, like I said, is an example of a cloud-based identity provider that uses modern authentication. Okay, so let's talk about federated services. I'm going to be talking about federated services using a diagram. So when you see IDP A and IDP B, IDP A is and IDP B, they are two different identity providers. So we have maybe Azure Active Directory, and we have your normal Windows Active Directory. So identity provider A is, let's say, it's Azure Active Directory. Identity B is your Windows Active Directory, your Windows Server Active Directory. So the user authenticates with identity B, which is your Windows Azure Active and Windows Active Directory, the Windows Server Active Directory. Once he authenticates with the Windows Active Directory, he has a trust relationship that is configured between A and B. So there's a trust relationship between the Windows Active Directory and the Azure Active Directory. That a trust relationship means that I trust you, you trust me. I trust you, I'm allowing you inside my organization. You trust me, you're allowing me inside the organization. That is a trust. We both trust each other that we are allowed to access our resources. So once the IDP B, the user authenticates with IDP B, and has a trust relationship. When the user credentials are passed to the website trusts the user and allows the website that is in IDPA trust the user because they have established a trust relationship. So let me use a human being as an example. Ope, I want to access a website in Azure Active Directory. How do I access this website in Azure Active Directory? And I'm an on-premise user. I'm a Windows Active Directory user. I need to establish a trust relationship between my Azure Active Directory and my Windows Active Directory. Once there's a trust relationship, which is the concept of federated service, I would be able to access that website using my Windows Active Directory credentials. That's the scenario. That's how it works. So let's talk about the concept of directory services and Active Directory. So you'll be wondering what directory is. A directory is an hierarchical structure that stores information about objects on the network. It's almost similar to a database of your information. So it's storing your information in a particular place in your network. Information like is storing your username, is storing your password, is storing your data. That's what a directory comprises of. That's the meaning of a directory. A directory also stores directory data and makes it available to network users, administrators, services, and applications. So a directory gives access to the directory data to your network users, administrators, services, and applications. For instance, now I want to install Exchange Server on-prem. Or let me not say Exchange Server on-prem for people that might not know what Exchange servers are. Let me say a specific application. Just take it that any application I need to install on my organization, in my organization. It's going to need to connect to the directory, my directory that has already been created, I have in my organization, to get the data and information it needs. So once it connects to this directory, it gets information like the users that are inside this directory, the directory data, the resources that are shared. It gains access to that. It gains access to the user's information, your devices information, your objects, directory data, your directory objects. It gains access to that. That's how it works. And then the best type or the best known service for directory is the Active Directory Domain Services, which a lot of organizations make use of, which allows them to create their users, centrally manage their users, deploy policies to their users, create join devices to the Active Directory, create objects, create containers. That's what organizations use. And Azure Active Directory is the evolution of identity and access management solutions that providing organization as an identity as a service solution for their applications across cloud and on-prem. So Azure Active Directory doesn't stick to only your cloud applications. It also integrates with your on-premise application, unlike the Windows Active Directory where you have to do everything on-prem. But Azure Active Directory gives you the chance to integrate your on-prem and your cloud solution. That's the concept of directory services and Active Directory. So in this module, you should have learned about zero trust methodology that I mentioned, that you have to trust no one and verify everything. do not assume that every single policy has been put in place. You need to verify, you need to check, you need to protect your organization. You also need to put in defense in-depth processes, methods, approach. Make sure every single policy you have put in place is blocking different ways in which an attacker can gain access to your organization data. Make sure there is no loose ends. We also looked at the shared responsibility models, telling you the one that the on-premise, which your organization manages the security, whereby the IaaS, the PaaS, the SaaS, the security is being managed by the organization and the cloud provider. We also talked about the CIA triad, which is the confidentiality, the identity, the availability. Confidentiality, you must be able to keep confidential information. They must not get into the wrong hands. Availability, it must be available for people that need that right. And integrity means that it must remain as how it was created. There must be no corruption in your data. We also talked about common cybersecurity threats like phishing, spear phishing, dictionary brute force attack, SQL injection, ransomware. We talked about that too. We talked about the concept of identity and the four pillars of identity: the administration, the authorization, the authentication, and the auditing. We also talked about identity related services like the modern authentication, the federation services, and the directory services. So that will bring us to the end of this module, but I would like to prepare us for the next module to come. For the labs to come, we'll need a Microsoft 365 license. So in order to register for that, I'll be showing you how we can do that. So I'll put in a link in the chat box on what to do to have a trial account, to sign up for a trial account. Okay. This Microsoft 365 developer program is going to allow us to create a trial that lasts for 90 days. So with this, we'll be able to deploy security policies. We can explore security policies, security approach that we can use. So if we click on the join now, so it will ask me to put in a Microsoft account that I want to use. So I must have a Microsoft account before I can sign in. I'm sure this is not going to go because I already used it before. So I put in my username and password of my Microsoft account. So I come here, select the country, Nigeria, depending on the country you're in. The company, which is my company name, my test company name. So it's not where you are working right now. Is if you had a company in real life, your own particular company, what would you give it? What's the name you would give it? So my company name can be Gray Enterprises. Which language do you prefer? Click on accept and you click next. What's your primary focus as a developer? You can just choose any one. Doesn't really matter. You can choose what you want to focus on. You can choose everyone, you can choose just one. That also doesn't really matter. So I click on instant sandbox. If I click on instant sandbox, what this will do is going to create fictitious users for me. I can also choose to create my own users. So it's going to create fictitious users for me and then assign license to these users. So the license includes EMS license, which is into mobile device management. You get identity protection, you get Azure information protection for your data, you get your Office 365 license, which includes your Exchange Online, your Outlook, your Word. So this is a very good this thing that you can use for tests, for trials. Before you put in production, you can use this as a test lab. Okay, so I'm in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Now I put in the admin username that I want to use every time I want to access. So once I go to portal.office.com, I need to put in this particular admin username. And this admin is automatically given global admin as it is the first admin in your organization. So I can call it Ope. I can give it a strong password. And then click on continue. I can now put my user and my phone number. It's going to send me a code to my number for me to verify. Oh, wait. Okay. So I've gotten the code now. So it has created it. So my domain that's giving me a domain name. I can choose to change this domain name if I have a domain name I've already acquired. So if I've acquired a gray.com.ng, I can choose to add it in the setup. So I can choose the sample data, which is to add 16 fictitious users that don't exist, with names, with their metadata, their photos, it also comes with licenses and creates a mailbox for them. So if I click on install, it's going to show me how to do that. Okay. I think the fictitious usernames have already been added. So I can go to portal.office.com and sign in with what I just created now, which is Okpe at this. I use the password that I imputed when I was setting it up. So now Microsoft has enabled security defaults. So this security default automatically enables you to set up your multi-factor authentication. So it protects you immediately. So for organizations that might have not, is actually new. Before, organizations could have created an account and doesn't enable security defaults. So this security defaults, any admin account, it automatically enables multi-factor authentication for them. But you can choose to turn it off as an organization if you don't want it. You want to be doing it yourself. So I'm going to skip this for 14 days. And now I have a license. So I go to the admin center. Okay. The admin centers allows me to manage my users, manage my groups, manage licenses, manage other admin centers like your OneDrive admin center, your Exchange admin center, your SharePoint admin center. So I have my users here. So if I click on active users, it has already created those 16 fictitious users that do not exist and giving them license. So I can choose to change their password and sign in with one of them. I can choose to create my own user. So this is a user, Gilead True. I can choose to automatically create a password or give it a password myself, and then it tells the user to sign in with a new password after once it changes it. So once I do this, I specify its location, Nigeria, or wherever the person is. Assign the license. I can now choose the particular apps that I want the person to be able to access. So if you don't want to give the person Azure AD license premium 2, you want the person to only have premium 1, you can deselect it. You don't want the person to have Azure information protection license, Azure Right license. You don't want the person to have Microsoft 365 Defender. You don't want the person to have Intune license, information governance. You can select whatever license you want to give and whatever license you don't want to give. Now, if you want to make the user a specific admin, which we'll be discussing later in the course about different security administrators, you can come here and choose the particular admin rights you want to give it. You can say you only want it to be able to see the billings. You can give it billing administrator. You want it to be able to do everything in the organization, global admin. Depending on what you want to achieve, you can come here and give the person rights. Then I don't want to give a person rights. I want the person to be a normal user. Then you click on finish. That's how you create a user. Once you have created your users, you want to put them in a specific group. Now, this specific group, you want to be pushing different policies. There are already fictitious groups too created with users in them. But if you want to create a particular group, you can click on add group. Do you want it to be a Microsoft 365? Do you want it to be a distribution group? Do you want it to be a mail enabled group or a security group? So I'm going to choose a security group. Give it a name, sales entity. Give it a description if you have one. Once I create the group, I click on it and add member. I'm going to add the user that I just created. This is actually important if we want to test our policies, security policies, to users in our organization. We should create a group, a specific group, depending on what you want to achieve with that policy. So you want to enable this for a specific group of users, and you don't want it to be enabled for other users. So you add them to a specific group and name the group according to what as the policy that you want to achieve. So I've added the user to the group. Once I am done adding the user to the group, I can now go ahead to the various admin centers and apply policies to them. So I'm going to stop here right now. By next week, we should be using this account that has been created. We'll start creating policies, basic policies for you to see and test them out in your test organization. So thank you once again, everyone. If anyone has any question, please feel free to ask.
Okay, the link has been dropped in the chat box. It's important that we set up this account because from module 2 we'll begin to have hands-on. Any questions, please? You have the whole week to drop your questions too. You start reading. Can we drop the okay? Can we drop the Microsoft Learn link to SC900?
Okay, I'll do that now.
Yes, on the chat so that you can read and then prepare yourself any questions. And just to add a fun to what we're doing, at the end of our 4 week, we're going to have a question board at the end of the 4 week program. Whoever is the first two people who are top on the leadership board will get a nice gift from the security mentors. So we'll do a quick recap. Today it's just beginners class, but we'll do a quick recap of what we've done from the. So I'll just share my screen and come. Okay. So can we? So there's a link on the chat board called Mentee. Can we click on it, please? And can we click and open the link? That's just a quick game and reminder of what we've learned. Um, if you get to this page, please don't click anything yet. Okay, hold on. Sorry, hold on. It's not, I didn't share the right link. Share. Okay, something is wrong. I'm sorry, we might have to do this in next class. I don't know what's wrong. I can't. Nah, not working. Okay, sorry. What I wanted us to do is not working. We might have to do it next class. But yes, we'll have question and answer with rewards for who tops the leadership board at the end of the 4 weeks program. Do we have any other question? Okay, we've dropped 2 links. Someone said there are too many links, so we've dropped 3 links. The first link is the one that says developer.microsoft. That's the link you're supposed to use to set up your trial account that will allow you do your assignments and do your labs from next module. There's another link called the Microsoft Docs. That's the link that takes you to Microsoft Learn for SC900, where you can do some read ups on your own so that you can be able to answer the questions and assignments that will start to go out during the course of the week. We will drop assignments in the Teams chat for you to do your readiness for next week class. So those are just the 2 links. It was just sent multiple times. So the one that is developer.microsoft.com allows you create your temporary account. Then the Microsoft Docs is the Microsoft portal for this course, SC900. Any other question, please? And just in summary, what we have done today is to touch bits and bits of different part of conversations that take you to fully being able to do security, compliance, and identity. Um, the truth is, doing security without any background in information technology is a bit complex. That's the truth, because you're trying to secure something that you want to be able to understand how it works. So, but what we've done is just certain key areas that will keep coming up from module 2, and as we progress into the advanced and expert stage of this program, we is what we have addressed in this module 1. But it'll be good that you start to read up and note those words that sound complex to you, or those things that are strange to you, or those things that are new to you, so that you can access during enjoy using the conversation post on the Teams. We would be responding during the week as you drop those questions. If you're reading something and you don't understand, drop them there, and we would engage you there. But one thing you must know is that to enjoy security, it would be good you have if you don't have any previous knowledge about technology, it might look like it's too much, but that's why we're here to help you. Ask us any question. Like one of the mentors, one of the founders said in the opening session last week, she said, don't be afraid to be afraid. Like how do she put, don't be too scared to fear or something. So don't say, oh, because I'm scared my question might be stupid, or I'm afraid. That no, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay not to know. It's okay to ask quote and unquote stupid questions. That's why we're here. At the end of the day, what we want is by the end of the program, beyond even the 4 weeks, as we extend into the expert, you'll be able to be an authority when it comes to doing security, compliance, and identity. In the absence of any further question, we would be closing, and we did well with our 2 weeks, 2 hours. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and you can take back your Saturday. Okay. Any other thing from you?
No, nothing. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.